Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. India's envoy to the UN lauds Trump's role in Gaza ceasefire deal, reaffirms two-state solution as path to Israel-Palestine peace. Union Minister Piyush Goyal hopes for India-US trade deal in near future, engages with Germany and Luxembourg businesses on his visit to Berlin. EU vows financial backing for Ukraine, holds off frozen assets plan. Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Foreign powers to host Sudan truce meeting in Washington on Friday, aim to push country's long-running war towards a permanent ceasefire and peace. India at the United Nations on Thursday called US President Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire deal a landmark initiative and emphasized that the talks must continue for the agreement to hold. Indian envoy to the UN, Parvathaneni Harish, also commended the role of Egypt and Qatar towards achieving the deal. He remained firm in its view that dialogue and diplomacy and the two-state solution are the means to achieve peace in the entire Middle East.
We welcome the signing of the landmark peace agreement. It is India's hope that the positive diplomatic momentum that has been generated would lead to lasting peace in the region. At this juncture, India would also like to place on record its appreciation for the United States and especially President Donald Trump for playing an instrumental role in forging the agreement. Further, India also commends the role of Egypt and Qatar towards achieving this end. India remains firm in the view that dialogue and diplomacy and the two-state solution are the means to achieve peace. India's position is firmly rooted in its consistent stance on the developments in 7th October 2023, as well as the overall Palestinian question. India has clearly condemned terrorism, stressed that there must be an end to destruction, despair, and suffering of civilians, and sought the immediate release of all hostages.
He further stated that over the last 2 years, India has provided relief assistance of nearly 135 metric tons of medicines and supplies to Palestine.
Another central element is economic prospects and viability of a Palestinian state. Aid is essential in the short term for rehabilitation and reconstruction. Palestinian people cannot rebuild their lives without the support of the international community. India has been active on this front. The total support by India to the Palestinian people is to the tune of over $170 million, which includes projects worth $40 million in various stages of implementation. Our commitment manifests in various forms depending upon the needs and priorities of the Palestinian people. We have implemented human-centric projects bilaterally and also partnered with the United Nations and the Palestinian Authority in this regard. Over the last 2 years alone, India has provided relief assistance of nearly 135 metric tons of medicines and supplies. Looking ahead, these initiatives must be coupled with the creation of economic frameworks and mechanisms that are conducive for social development, investment, and employment.
Speaking on the Middle East situation, the envoy said that the humanitarian challenges are an important dimension and it is important to address these on priority.
Indian troops in Andof remain steadfast in executing their mandate even during extreme challenges experienced during the recent conflict, including the supreme sacrifice by Acting Force Commander Brigadier General Amitabh Jha in December 2024. India is the third largest contributor to this mission. As the second largest contributor to UNIFIL, India reiterates the importance of the safety and security of peacekeepers of this mission. At a broader level, peacekeepers serve a very critical function of the UN, and they cannot become casualties of conflicts and escalations. India remains hopeful that the Lebanese armed forces would be equipped to discharge the entire spectrum of its responsibilities once the UNIFIL sunset clause becomes operational towards the end of 2026.
Speaking on India's role in peacekeeping in Yemen, he said that the humanitarian situation in Yemen is an area of concern and must be considered above politics.
The humanitarian situation in Yemen is an area of concern. Humanitarian assistance must be above politics. It must reach all civilians, irrespective of affiliations and power structures. Immediate cessation of hostilities would catalyze these efforts. Safety and security of Indian nationals in Yemen are a priority for us.
India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal, who is on an official visit to Germany from October 23rd to hold important meetings designed to facilitate high-impact interactions with senior government officials, industry leaders and business associations in both the countries to further boost the Indo-German relations. On the sidelines of his Berlin visit, the minister spoke to DD India correspondent Sonika Raina on the ongoing India-US trade talks. Let's listen in.
So would you like to tell us something about the ongoing US-India trade negotiations?
We are in dialogue with the United States of America. Our teams are engaged. We recently had the Commerce Secretary visit the US and he met with his counterparts. We continue to engage with them and talks are progressing. We hope to work towards a fair and equitable agreement in the near future.
At the invitation of Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will virtually attend the 22nd ASEAN-India Summit on 26 October. Prime Minister Modi and the ASEAN leaders will jointly review the progress in ASEAN-India relations. They will discuss initiatives for strengthening the comprehensive strategic partnership. Strengthening the relationship with ASEAN is a key pillar of India's Act East policy and Indo-Pacific vision. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will represent India at the 20th East Asia Summit in Kuala Lumpur on 27th of October. And East Asia Summit will provide an opportunity to deliberate on the challenges to peace, stability and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. A new book titled Modi's Mission, authored by renowned lawyer and writer Burgess Desai, will be released on Friday in Mumbai by Maharashtra Governor Acharya Devvrat and Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. The book traces Prime Minister Narendra Modi's inspiring journey from a humble childhood in Vadnagar to his emergence as the nation's leader. Take a look.
Author Burgess Desai describes Modi's mission not as a biography, but as a story of an idea, the idea of national resurgence and self-reliance. The book explores the formative experiences from Modi's early years that shaped his views on governance, leadership and social transformation. It also reflects on how the Prime Minister, despite facing challenges and criticism, rose as an instrument of national awakening.
It is to explain his personal spiritual journey, the mindset which evolved during extremely hard conditions during his childhood, which still people do not know. How he left home permanently at 17, his sadhana and siddhi during those 2.5 years when he was in the Himalayas and in the northern parts of the country, and all the spiritual experiences he had. And then how he has implemented this mindset, this idea of what motivates him is service. It has been a continuous story of service and sacrifice.
The author examines major policy milestones, including the formalization of India's economy, the abrogation of Article 370, and the government's push for transparent and result-oriented governance. Desai also discusses what he calls the false narratives spread by a section of the intellectual class attempting to discredit Modi's leadership.
The palpably false narratives which have been spun by a section of the intellectual elite, the Western media and some of our left-leaning historians, who obviously cannot assail his impeccable integrity and his administrative acumen and his relentless hard work and all. He is a transformative leader, and one day he will be judged on par. The Mahatma will be remembered for 1947, and when Viksit Bharat happens, Modi will be remembered for 2047.
A Mumbai-based lawyer and a former journalist, Burgess Desai brings his sharp analytical lens to present Modi's mission as an engaging account of the Prime Minister's methodical approach towards strengthening India's civilizational identity and building an efficient welfare state. Shama Mishra's report from Mumbai for DD India.
The book, Modi's Mission, has been authored by renowned lawyer and writer Burgess Desai, who spoke exclusively to our correspondent Shama Mishra. Take a look.
Noted lawyer and acclaimed author Burgess Desai is with us, and he has written yet another book on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is the first one on Prime Minister, but yes, he has been writing earlier as well, and the book is called Modi's Mission. Sir, welcome to DD India. We have seen several other books on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What inspired you to write on Prime Minister, and how is this book different from the already existing ones?
So this book is not another biography of the Prime Minister, nor is it about his politics or election campaigns or any of his present-day political opponents. As a matter of fact, none of them are even mentioned in the book. It is motivated by two reasons. Firstly, that as we are in the midst of a lot of events happening in the midst of history, we are unable to fully appreciate what position Narendra Modi will ultimately hold in the history of modern India. And secondly, we also underestimate the sheer enormity of the task he has done over 24 years of elective public office which he has held. 13 years as Gujarat CM and 11 years as PM, where he puts in 16 hours a day and with hardly 4.5 hours of sleep, and flits from subject to subject affecting every aspect of national life. So it is to explain his personal spiritual journey, the mindset which evolved during extremely hard conditions during his childhood, which still people do not know. How he left home permanently at 17, his sadhana and siddhi during those 2.5 years when he was in the Himalayas and in the northern parts of the country, and all the spiritual experiences he had. And then how he has implemented this mindset, this idea of what motivates him is service. It has been a continuous story of service and sacrifice for all these years, because even before elective public office, for 30 years he was a pracharak and a BJP functionary, where again he put on this same 24/7 service. So it is to explain how he has been a transformative agent, one who has uplifted the collective consciousness of Indians beyond party political lines. And then it has been analyzed the way he transformed Gujarat, the challenges he faced, and then things like how 370 came to be abrogated. And I have also traced the history of Kashmir and all these other places from 1948 onwards, without the usual whitewash which is put on it by some of our historians. And he's dealing with the judiciary. He's dealing with all the governance achievements which he has made in making India the fastest growing large economy, digitalization of the economy, direct benefit transfer, the whole welfare state. We are unable to appreciate the staggering welfare state which is evolving every day. But more importantly, the second reason behind writing this book is that whilst I was researching for this book, I realized the palpably false narratives which have been spun by a section of the intellectual elite, the Western media and some of our left-leaning historians, who obviously cannot assail his impeccable integrity and his administrative acumen and his relentless hard work and all. So they raise this question of secularism, and what they mean by secularism, by whether it is appeasement or whether it is sterilization or negation of history, etc. So it has been a candid analysis, and I belong to a minority community. I'm not a Hindu. And I'm almost a near retired lawyer with no axe to grind. So I felt that somebody should speak out and understand that he's a transformative leader, and one day he will be judged on par. The Mahatma will be remembered for 1947, and when Viksit Bharat happens, Modi will be remembered for 2047.
Also, you mentioned about a part where the falsehood narrative which is being spread by the India's intellect. How do you address this particular point in this book, and how do you want the readers to actually understand this aspect?
So subject-wise and event-wise, I have analyzed the various narratives what is the evidence on record, what are the facts, and how all this has transpired for a dispassionate reader, as I said, across party lines, to understand and note the sheer intellectual dishonesty of a section of the elite and also some of our left-leaning historians who have always tried to put a spin on it. And instead of being, I wouldn't use the word grateful, but instead of appreciating what a transformative change he has brought about in the country, which will be appreciated maybe a few years later when we'll be more dispassionate about it. And I do believe that 50 years later, Narendra Modi will be judged he will be regarded as iconic and he'll be judged very differently.
So he'll be judged differently, and obviously this is with the mind, with the fact that you want the young readers also to read what is actually going on, what he's doing for the nation. For young readers and even the people who are elder, how do you see those, especially with having different political views, to read to read your book and to understand what is actually being done by a prime minister?
So as I said, the book is not about politics. Not even a single political opponent is even mentioned by name. So the whole idea is to show his governance of what he has achieved in various aspects of life, which cuts across party lines. So if somebody is really dispassionate, he may or may not be a voter of the BJP, or he may not be voting for the Prime Minister. But yet, here is an iconic leader who has done things for the country. And you may not agree with his entire philosophy or political philosophy or the manner in which his party thinks. You cannot fail to appreciate what a person has done if you are truly dispassionate.
Thank you very much for talking to us. So that was Burgess Desai, who has written the book on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Modi's mission, and we will have that copy soon and understand what actually has been written in that book. With camera person Kapil Maske, this is Shyama Mishra for DD India, Mumbai.
All right, you're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, final candidate list released for Bihar Assembly election phase 2, voting to be held on 11th November. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh interacts with soldiers in Jaisalmer, calls them a true symbol of national pride. Kurnool bus tragedy on Hyderabad-Bengaluru highway claims 11 lives. Injured provided medical aid.
Embark on a timeless journey. Unravel the mysteries of a grandiose era. A treasure trove of royal and sacred complexes, temples, shrines, pillared halls, mandapas, rock-cut memorials and more. A spectacular setting of rugged landscape and exemplary workmanship, representing the best of Dravidian architecture. Every structure carved out as a unique artistic creation. A heritage landmark that reflects pure magnificence, integrated within its natural environment. An unexplored haven for nature and adventure enthusiasts. An imposing heritage reflected in its street bazaars and annual festivals of music and culture. Come, be mesmerized by the glorious capital of the Vijayanagar Empire.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News. Let's get you more updates. A tragic bus fire in Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh claimed several lives and left many others injured on the Hyderabad-Bengaluru highway in early hours of Friday. The accident occurred near Chinna Tekur village when a Kaveri Travels bus caught fire. Authorities rushed to the site to rescue passengers and provide medical aid. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister N. Chandrababu Naidu expressed shock over the incident and offered condolences to the families of the deceased, assuring full support to the injured and affected. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh interacted with soldiers in Jaisalmer, a city in the western state of Rajasthan. During his interaction, Rajnath Singh hailed the courage of armed personnel and said that Operation Sindoor reflects India's power to turn pain into strength. The minister also appreciated the teamwork and discipline of the forces stationed in Jaisalmer, calling them a true symbol of national pride. Rajnath Singh said that the bravery of the soldiers inspires the entire nation and strengthens India's unity.
जैसलमेर की इस धरती ने ऐसे अनेक पराक्रम देखे हैं। यहाँ की रेत के एक-एक कण हमारे सैनिकों के शौर्य की गवाही देते हैं।
The minister also released the Defence Procurement Manual 2025 at a function in New Delhi on Thursday. Effective from 1st of November this year, the new procurement manual will facilitate the revenue procurement amounting to approximately 1 lakh crore rupees by the 3 services and other establishments under Ministry of Defence. Appreciating the efforts of the Ministry of Defence and Headquarters Integrated Defence Staff for the revision of the manual, the Defence Minister expressed confidence that the new manual will simplify the procedures, bring uniformity in functioning and will be helpful in providing goods and services required by the armed forces for operational preparedness. Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav visited the War Room at Rail Bhavan on Thursday to review the railway's preparations for Chhath Puja. He interacted with officials, monitored real-time train operations and assessed crowd management and passenger facilities at key stations. The minister elaborated on plans to run additional special trains, strengthen coordination between the zones and deploy more staff to ensure safe, smooth and comfortable travel for passengers during the festive rush.
तो 10,700 जो कि पहले से नोटिफाइड IRCTC के वेबसाइट पे पहले से नोटिफाइड है, जिनमें टिकट रिजर्व करके आप पहले से ले सकते हो और जो सडन सर्ज आती है उसके लिए अबाउट 3,000 ट्रेन का प्रोविजन रखा गया है। ओवरऑल 13,000 की तरफ ये नंबर जा रहा है, मे बी इट विल इंक्रीज मोर। इस बार डेस्टिनेशन बहुत बढ़ा दिए, जैसे पिछले साल डेस्टिनेशन बिहार के 7 बड़े शहर थे, इस बार करीब 18 बड़े शहरों को रखा, 18 लोकेशंस को बिहार के 18 लोकेशंस को डेस्टिनेशन रखा गया है।
And up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. The final list of candidates for the second phase of Bihar Assembly Elections 2025 has been released after the last date of withdrawal for nominations ended on October 23rd. A total of 122 assembly constituencies across 20 districts are included in this phase. Voting for the second phase will take place on November 11th. In 2 simultaneous rescue operations, Drishti Marine Lifesavers saved 42 people after a cruise boat and a dinghy got stranded off Aguada Bay in North Goa amid rough seas and thunderstorms. The rescue teams used rigid inflatable boats and jet skis to reach the vessels trapped among the rocks. Despite turbulent waves, all passengers were brought ashore safely with help from Aguad Jail and port staff. Also, the operation highlighted the team's courage, quick response and coordination in keeping Goa's waters safe. In Jharkhand's Hazaribagh district, police have busted an opium smuggling network and arrested 6 people during an anti-drug drive ahead of the Bihar Assembly elections. Around 2.7 kilograms of illegal drugs, 4 mobile phones and vehicles were seized from the spot. The arrests point to an active interstate drug trafficking network involving links across Jharkhand, Bihar and Punjab. On October 23rd, International Snow Leopard Day was observed and the global 23 for 23 campaign was actively supported by Project by Project Brahmank of the Border Roads Organization, that is BRO, to promote snow leopard protection. BRO personnel engaged in community outreach with forest officials and villagers, encouraging coexistence and habitat preservation. They also participated in group walks, yoga, team runs and a tree plantation drive, highlighting the balance between development and conservation of fragile mountain ecosystems. Up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world now. King Charles III attended a ceremony at College in Rome, which trains priests from Commonwealth countries. During the visit, Queen Camilla met Catholic sisters from the International Union of Superiors General. The trip follows the King's historic visit to the Vatican, where he becomes the first head of the Church in England to pray alongside the Pope. 3 weeks after deadly floods in Veracruz, Mexico, residents are still struggling as government help remains slow. Families are living in makeshift roadside shelters, having lost their homes completely. They hope for more assistance soon so they can finally return to their houses, while authorities' delayed response continues to worry the affected communities. You're watching DD Indian News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, Trump insists he can strike alleged drug traffickers without Congress declaring war. Argentines head to the polls on Sunday in crucial midterm elections. New Zealand Parliament to debate teen social media ban.
Welcome to DD India, where a billion voices unite, connecting viewers to the stories that matter. India is not just another news channel. It's the international channel that puts the spotlight on the global south, bringing you stories from the heart of emerging economies, dynamic cultures, and transformative voices. As the international news channel of India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati, DD India delivers high-quality content from every corner of the globe, focusing on the stories that shape our future. We don't just report news. We connect you to India's voice in the global narrative, from current affairs to culture, from economic growth to sustainable development, and the ever-evolving world order. DD India gives you a comprehensive view of the world around us. Stay connected, stay informed, and embrace the stories that shape our lives. DD India. India's voice to the world.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News. A quick relook at the top stories now. India envoy to UN lauds Trump's role in Gaza ceasefire deal, reaffirms two-state solution as path to Israel-Palestine peace. Union Minister Piyush Goyal hopes for India-US trade deal in near future, engages with Germany and Luxembourg businesses on his visit to Berlin. EU vows financial backing for Ukraine, holds off on frozen assets plan. Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Foreign powers to host Sudan truce meeting in Washington on Friday, aim to push country's long-running war towards a permanent ceasefire and peace. European leaders pledged on Thursday to cover Ukraine's financial needs in 2026 and 2027, but stopped short of approving a plan that would draw from frozen Russian assets to do so after Belgium raised objections. EU leaders met in Brussels on Thursday to discuss Ukraine's pressing financial needs for the next 2 years. Many leaders had hoped the talks would clear the way for a so-called reparation loan, which would use frozen Russian assets held by the Belgian financial institution Euroclear to fund a loan of 140 billion euros for Ukraine. The EU froze about 200 billion euros of Russian central bank assets after the country launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In order to use the assets to fund Ukraine, the European Commission, the EU's executive, has floated a complex financial maneuver that involves the EU borrowing matured funds from Euroclear.
European leaders committed to ensure that Ukraine's financial needs will be covered for the next 2 years. We have asked the Commission to put forward options as soon as possible so that Ukraine has the resources it needs to continue defending itself and fight for a just and lasting peace in 2026 and 2027 if it's necessary.
We agreed on the what, that is the reparations loan, and we have to work on the how we make it possible, what is the best option to move forward.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Britain on Friday called for a raft of measures against Russia to strengthen Ukraine's hand ahead of any future peace talks. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office said that he would press a meeting of the coalition of the willing countries that have pledged to strengthen support for Ukraine to take Russian oil and gas off the global market, use frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, and give Kyiv more long-range missiles. All right, our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh is joining us to get us more. Shubhendu, good morning. We've told our viewers about the European leaders pledging to provide and help in maintaining financial assistance for Ukraine, but they fell short of zeroing in on a particular plan on how that will be executed. What more can you add to it?
Good morning, Preeti. It does look like a double setback for President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. First, his expectation of getting Trump's support, President Trump of the US support for the Tomahawk missiles did not work out. And now the expectation that these Russian frozen assets could be mobilized to fund Ukraine in this conflict have also not materialized. Although the decision has been postponed to December, it will be taken up again. But for now, both in terms of the resources and the advanced ammunition to continue the fight against Russia is something where President Zelenskyy has received a setback. This making the frozen assets, Russian assets available to Ukraine was never going to be easy legally. There were these litigation-related issues that Brussels in particular was jittery about. It wanted assurances that should some litigations come up in future years ahead, the countries of European Union must come forward to participate in supporting that. Shouldn't be the Brussels concerns alone. So those were some finer points where the decision could not be worked out. And what did work out was a sort of blanket statement that the financial needs of Ukraine would be taken care of. All is not lost. You mentioned about the Friday summit in London, which is once again going to be focusing on strengthening the hand of Ukraine. We learned the focus could be on providing the access to long-range missiles, which could be of a great strategic advantage to Ukraine at this point in the conflict, where it is not just about making certain headways against Russia, but also getting an upper hand as far as the negotiations are concerned. So in all these respects, one will have to wait and watch what comes out of the London summit. But so far, his engagements with European Union and the White House haven't yielded the results that he would have expected. Preeti?
All right, Shubhendu, the conflict started in 2022. For the benefit of our viewers, help us understand what next when we talk of the conflict. Which way is it headed to?
Well, Preeti, as you mentioned, it's been over 3 years. The conflict has dragged on. We've seen dramatic gains made by both the sides, Ukraine and Russia. As we speak, it is Russia which, at least on the ground, militarily appears to have an upper hand over Ukraine. It has made important gains in much of eastern Ukraine, the Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Donetsk region. That is also the region that President Putin of Russia would like to transform into some sort of a buffer zone. That is something that he had forwarded in the negotiations. He would want the Ukrainian forces to actually step back from that region. President Donald Trump suggests that the battle lines be frozen, but that's easier said than done. The forces of Russia and Ukraine are fighting in each other's territory. It would be very difficult to freeze and think of a ceasefire in such a context. Therefore, the ceasefire looks complex. Also, the kind of support that Ukraine had enjoyed in the initial years of the conflict, both from America and the European Union, is becoming complex now. We know President Trump and the kind of investment that he wants to make into this conflict, although one of the first major interventions against Russia came up just a couple of days back when President Trump announced those major sanctions against the leading oil companies of Russia. He hopes that would put some sort of brakes as far as Russian war machine is concerned and bring both sides on the table for negotiations. But for now, the kind of the kind of posturing that Russia and Ukraine have been doing, a ceasefire negotiation at the moment seems difficult, and the conflict, meanwhile, Preeti, drags on.
All right, Shubhendu, also help us understand to what extent would this reparation loan, how will that be implemented? Because we tell our viewers that the Russian assets held by Belgian financial institution Euroclear to fund a loan of 140 billion euros for Ukraine. To what extent is this possible? And also we're talking of the sanctions by the Western world on Russia, which over the past 3 years, as the conflict drags on, has not been able to deter Russia when we talk of the conflict. So put all this together, how are both Russia and Ukraine, respectively poised when we talk of this conflict?
Preeti, if you talk about the reparations first, well, that measure hasn't really worked out at present. At the Brussels summit, there was expectation of some sort of forward movement in favor of Ukraine, when about 140 billion euros of frozen Russian assets in this institution that you mentioned, what it does is it's a storehouse of international financial infrastructure, including those of Russia, Euroclear, based in Brussels. The idea was to either liquidate or provide loan against these assets to Ukraine. In either cases, it would have meant giving the Russian assets to Ukraine to fight this conflict. Now, because of the legal hassles, because there was no agreement on the manner in which future litigation, if any, would be dealt with, therefore, this issue is sort of closed for now till December later this year. For now, the kind of financial support that the European Union has been providing Ukraine will continue. And if I were to quote the representative of the European Commission, talks in terms of the financial needs of Ukraine will be met by the European allies. As far as the sanctions against Russia is concerned, Kremlin has clearly said that, one, it had warned against a painful response if this asset mobilization Russian asset mobilization had happened, which has not happened at the moment. Also, the sanctions that the Trump administration has put on the major oil companies of Russia. Russia had also said that it would not be very effective. We've seen in the past the manner in which Russia has been able to stay immune to these major Western sanctions, especially since the beginning of this conflict. But its economy is in a dire state. There is going to be an impact, but it's not just Russia that is going to bear the impact. We've been talking about the global impact of this Russia-Ukraine conflict. And one of the inputs that we saw yesterday was about 5% jump in global oil prices as a result of the sanctions that were put on the Russian oil companies. In the days ahead, we'll have to see the manner in which the rest of the oil giants are able to manage this rise, or else there's going to be more pain for the global economy coming from the energy sector now. Preeti?
All right, Shubhendu, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details and that understanding. And representatives of the United States, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Egypt will meet on Friday in Washington with the sides in Sudan's long-running conflict to push them towards a truce. Last month, the influential foreign powers, referred to as the Quad, jointly called for a humanitarian truce in Sudan, followed by a permanent ceasefire and a transition towards civilian rule. This week's meeting is focused on that plan and pressing the warring parties to implement a 3-month nationwide humanitarian truce. The Quad is acting collectively to apply unified pressure on the parties to stop the fighting and allow aid to reach the civilians. The officials said members of the grouping would meet with the two sides separately. Sudan's army-aligned government reacted coolly to the Quad's peace plan last month, rejecting the suggestion that both it and the RSF be excluded from the country's post-war political transition. The White House has confirmed that President Donald Trump's $300 million ballroom project will be fully funded through private donations and his own money with no taxpayer funds involved. Originally estimated at $200 million, the cost rose due to design changes. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the ballroom will host state visits and major events. Leavitt assured transparency with donor lists and Trump's contributions made public.
We have released the full list of donors thus far. Perhaps there will be more people who want to generously contribute to this project. And the president, yes, has committed his own resources. And when he releases that information, which I'm very confident he will, you will all see that.
Legal experts say that presidents can modify White House grounds without outside approval. No other renovations are planned, though Trump is keen to upgrade the complex. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that a wealthy private donor has provided $130 million to the U.S. government to cover potential shortfalls in military salaries caused by the ongoing government shutdown. Speaking at a White House event, Trump praised the wealthy donor as a patriot and a friend of mine, but declined to name him. The U.S. federal government has been partially shut down since October 1st as lawmakers in Congress remain deadlocked over a new budget, with disputes over healthcare subsidies at the center of the impasse.
By the way, a friend of mine, talking about donors, a friend of mine, a man that's great. I'm not going to use his name unless he lets me do it. Susie can tell you about this, but he called us the other day and he said, I'd like to contribute any shortfall you have because of the Democrat shutdown. I'd like to personally contribute any shortfall you have with the military, because I love the military and I love the country, and any shortfall, if there's a shortfall, I'll contribute it. And today he sent us a check for $130 million. I would love to tell you he doesn't really want the recognition, if you want to know the truth, but he gave us a check for $130 million, which was sort of a shortfall, yeah. And that's going to go to the military, yeah.
The Trump administration and Republican lawmakers in Congress cautioned on Thursday that flight disruptions are likely to worsen as the government shutdown stretches into its 23rd day, leaving air traffic controllers without their first full paycheck. Around 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 Transportation Security Administration officers are being forced to work without pay during the shutdown. Controllers are set to miss their first complete paycheck on Tuesday. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt warned of major flight delays, disruptions and cancellations at airports nationwide during the holiday season, blaming Democrats for the ongoing impasse. Democrats, however, dismissed the acquisition, insisting that it is President Trump and Republican leaders who are responsible for the stalemate by refusing to engage in negotiations.
If the Democrats continue to keep the government closed, we fear there will be significant flight delays, disruptions, and cancellations in major airports across the country this holiday season. If Democrats continue to shut down the government, they will also be shutting down American air travel.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that a report on the United States sending B-1 bombers near Venezuela to increase military pressure was false. Trump also said that his administration plans to brief the U.S. Congress on operations against drug cartels related to Venezuela, but that a declaration of war is not needed.
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay?
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro issued a warning on Thursday ordering the country's working class to launch a general insurrectionary strike and take up arms if the United States attempts any intervention in Venezuela. Speaking at an event in Caracas, Maduro declared that workers, peasants and fishermen would serve as the greatest shield the country has against foreign operation.
Por aquí. If one day they dare to come here or there, here is the greatest shield the country has, the working class. Not a pin would move, and a general insurrectionary, revolutionary strike by the working class and peasant would be declared in the streets until power was regained to carry out an even more radical revolution. Brothers and sisters, take this as an order. The order is given. If they dare, not a pin will move in this country. They would see the parade of millions of men and women with rifles in the fighting forces of the working class, the peasants, the fishermen, and the neighborhoods throughout the country.
Venezuela began a nationwide military deployment on Thursday as part of its Coast Independence 200 exercises aimed at defending the country's sovereignty and internal stability amid rising regional tensions. The drills, which span across the coastal states of La Guaira, Miranda, Aso, Artegui, Facun, Nueva Esparta, Carabobo, Sucre and Zulia, were launched under the supervision of Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez, who also serves as the Vice President for Defense and Sovereignty. During the deployment, Pedrino warned against alleged covert operations by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, saying any attempt to destabilize Venezuela would fail. He added that the military exercises are also a response to military threat in the Caribbean region. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has accused certain U.S. nationals of being involved in a complex fuel smuggling network operating across the border. Responding to a Reuters report, Sheinbaum confirmed during her morning press conference that American business figures were implicated in the illegal trade. Investigators have focused on a Houston-based firm, Icon Midstream, which allegedly mislabeled diesel exports to Mexico as lubricants to avoid high import taxes. While the company has not issued a statement, Mexican security officials said that it remains under active investigation. Authorities estimate that the smuggling operation may account for nearly one-third of Mexico's diesel market. Both Mexican and U.S. governments are stepping up enforcement measures, pursuing sanctions and legal proceedings against those tied to the fuel trafficking networks.
Tendrá que informar la Fiscalía.
Yes, there are U.S. business people in the cases under investigation. It couldn't be explained how illegal fuel entered or still enters in smaller quantities without someone on the other side. In fact, the United States also mentioned it and has its own investigations, the Department of Justice itself.
Peru's Gen Z protest movement is doubling down on its demands for political change, announcing plans to draft legislation repealing pro-crime laws while defending their constitutional right to demonstrate despite the government pushback. Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, movement spokesperson declared that protesters would continue taking to the streets regardless of the opposition from the authorities. The youth-led movement announced that it is working with the Lima Bar Association to draft legislation to repeal laws and restore democratic reforms. Their proposals include eliminating congressional immunity, ending lawmaker re-election, repealing the bicameral system, and restoring referendum rights. The Gen Z protesters have been joined by transport drivers and merchants frustrated with rising insecurity, corruption scandals, and economic instability. In Budapest, Hungarian opposition leader Peter Magyar held a large rally criticizing Prime Minister Viktor Orban's close ties with Russia. Supporters chanted the slogans as Magyar recalled Orban's past stance against Soviet troops. He accused the government of centralizing power and limiting press freedom. Orban, who organized a separate rally near Parliament, is preparing for elections expected in April 2026. Magyar's Tizu party currently leads in opinion polls, making the race one to watch out for. A bill to restrict social media for children under 16 will be introduced in the New Zealand Parliament, building momentum for Parliament's efforts to prevent young people from being harmed while being online. The proposed legislation will require social media platforms to conduct an age verification process similar to Australia's world-class teen social media ban that was passed in 2024. A New Zealand parliamentary committee has been looking at the impact of social media harm on young people and the roles that government, business and society should play in addressing those harms. A report is due in early 2026, according to a statement from the committee last week. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has been raising concerns about harms to mental health from the overuse of social media among young teens, including misinformation, bullying and harmful depictions of body image. And now we take a look at sports updates. The FBI carried out investigations into schemes involving illegal sports betting and rigged poker games, leading to arrest of 34 people. NBA Hall of Fame player Chauncey Billups and a guard with the Miami Heat, Terry Rozier, were among the people charged in connection with two separate but related federal gambling investigations. The schemes, one of them focused on insider sports betting and another that rigged poker games nationwide, spanned years and involved tens of millions of dollars in illicit gains from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion and gambling. That scheme also involved the Buonanno, Gambino, Lucchese and Genovese organized crime families in New York. While the arrests stemmed from the two separate indictments, a handful of defendants were charged in both the cases. Argentina's football star Lionel Messi has extended his contract with Major League Soccer club Inter Miami until 2028. Messi sparked fresh interest in the league when he first signed in 2023. The 8 times Ballon d'Or winner had previously stated that Inter Miami would be his last club. However, the 38-year-old has given no hint as to his possible retirement, saying that age would not be a factor. Messi was the leading goal scorer of the MLS this season with 29 goals. Miami finished third in the Eastern Conference. They are all set to play Nashville SC in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs beginning on Friday. India registered a commanding 53-run win over New Zealand in a rain-affected game to seal their place in the semi-finals of the ICC Women's ODI World Cup 2025. Openers Pratika Rawal and Smriti Mandhana smashed superb centuries to take India to a commanding total. It was a complete team effort from the women in blue as all the bowlers chipped in with crucial wickets to restrict New Zealand to 271 for 8 in 44 overs while chasing a revised target of 325. Renuka Singh and Kranti Gaur were the leading wicket takers of the match for India, picking up 2 wickets each. Renuka also achieved a major career milestone during the game, completing 100 international wickets. And let's take a look at some post-match exclusive fan reactions from the D.Y. Patil Stadium in Navi Mumbai, where India confirmed their spot in the semi-finals of the ICC Women's ODI World Cup 2025.
I'm very glad. I love India and I'm proud of it that India has won this match, and I'm super excited to see it in finale.
Smriti and our team has done well, and she performed as our expectation was.
This proves that women in blue are equal to men in blue.
I'm feeling really nice that India's won against New Zealand and they are qualified in the semi-finals.
It's feeling really good and it was really nice to see the match.
Well, it's really very overwhelming and really excited to see the further stages of Indian team, and really like the batting of Smriti Mandhana and Jamima Rodriguez, and really wishing that India wins the World Cup in the final.
This was the first time I went to women's cricket match, and I saw all the women and all the girls are so capable and they were so motivating and inspiring.
All right, with that we end this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. Now this app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.